Well, for the first time, we're hearing from the Russian pilot who survived the downing of his warplane over Turkey, that's alleged, that killed his co-pilot. The captain was rescued by Russian and Syrian commandos. And now that pilot, who's now showing his face to reporters, is disputing Turkish accounts of what actually happened.
Actually, there had been no warnings, neither on the radio nor visually. There had been no contacts whatsoever, so we kept the combat course as usual. One should keep in mind the speed of a bomber and the speed of an F-16 fighter jet. If they wanted to warn us, they could show themselves by entering parallel courses, but it didn't happen, and the missile hit our tail suddenly. We didn't see it and so weren't able to make any anti-missile maneuvers.
Well, protests being held at the Russian embassy in Moscow as tensions are rising between the two countries from putting fears of all-out war. Retired Navy Captain Chuck Nash is the Fox News military analyst, joins us now. And I just want to point out there's a lot of propaganda on all sides. Captain Nash, we heard from the Russians. We just heard from the Turkish military, who they say they're releasing audio that says clearly the warnings to the Russian plane. We have disputes of whether or not it was over Turkey, over Syria, what that fine line is. So there's a lot still to learn. But here we are 24 hours or so later. What do you make of this situation and where it stands?
Well, I think both sides actually have a point here. The Russians are going to say, look, we were orbiting in Syrian territory. Okay, we may have clipped the bottom of a little piece of your territory. No big deal. There are international procedures for intercepting aircraft. And the hand signals and all of the motions that you're supposed to do day and night, and they're published under international rules of aviation. We all know how to do that. The Turks have a point in that they have had repeated violations of their airspace. They even had their ambassador to Moscow demarche the Russians about a week or so ago, warning them that if they didn't stop these violations, that bad things could happen. So was this an ambush, as some allege, or was this just continued provocation by the Russians? Depends on where you sit, in Ankara or Moscow.
What's the big picture, though, for what it means for the conflict in Syria and otherwise?
Yeah, there are some people who are saying that really this is about the Turks trying to inflame the situation, to draw in NATO, which would then result in the ouster of Assad and pushing the Russians back out of Syria. I don't think it's going to come to that because NATO is in a very weakened state. They couldn't even handle Libya. The United States has shown absolutely no predilection to getting involved in anything anymore. And so the Russians are kind of like the big bully on the block. Therefore, the Russians don't want to start a war in Europe because if you just look at this from an economic standpoint and where they really are, oil prices are down. They're trying to sell natural gas and oil to Europe. 60% or 40% rather of Turkey's energy comes from Russia. And the Russians just signed a deal for $12 billion to build a pipeline through Turkey so they can start exporting natural gas to Europe. And that's why Vladimir Putin said this was a stab in the back that won't be tolerated. He was just in Ankara negotiating that deal. So he thought that he had a deal, and now all of a sudden this happens. It looks bad, but I don't think it's going to turn into anything.
I only have a short period of time before a commercial break. But what do you think this means for American pilots flying over Syria? Should we be more concerned?
The Russians are moving in air defense systems. They're bringing in SA-21 Growlers, which is their SA-400. It's a very capable surface-to-air missile system. They've moved the Moskva guided missile cruiser in closer to the coast so that its surface-to-air missiles can reach in. So here's the thing. This has been dangerous from the start because you've got the Syrian Air Force, the Russian Air Force, and the United States Air Force, and the French, and blah, 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 blah. It just keeps going. All these people are flying in the same airspace. This is not a good situation. Accidents can happen. Misjudgments can happen. We just saw it.
It sounds like it's getting more dangerous. Captain Nash, great to see you.